Hello and welcome to Stories Behind the Songs. I'm Jim Tompkins, and in each episode I tell the backstory behind a famous rock or pop song. Today's song is Another One Bites the Dust by the classic rock band Queen. Another One Bites the Dust was a song like no other from Queen, and really a unique song in the annals of rock music. It was a complete departure from Queen's progressive, rock-oriented songs of the 1970s. A song by an English rock band that went to the top of the disco and soul charts in the US. It was the biggest selling song of the year in the United States in 1980. Maybe most interestingly is how you can clearly trace the lineage of this song back through two other songs from the 1970s, and how each song built upon the previous one to morph and evolve. The roots of Another One Bites the Dust begin in 1974 with a great funk song by Kool and the Gang called Hollywood Swinging. The hook in the song includes the triple beat, bump, bump, bump. That's the beat that the whole song is built around. Hey, hey, hey. Kool and the Gang, in turn, was a big influence on the band Chic. Chic being founded in the early 70s by Bernard Edwards and Nile Rodgers, and in the late 70s had a string of disco hits. One of those songs, released in 1979, was Good Times. Just as in Hollywood Swinging, it has a great bass line that starts with the same triple beat, bump, bump, bump. The bass line blends in so beautifully with the song, it gets buried just a bit, but you can hear it clearly in the extended dance cut. Well, Chic was directly inspired by Kool and the Gang, and even said that Good Times was their tribute to Hollywood Swinging. What they did was create a major hit with one of the greatest bass lines in the history of pop music. The song went all the way to #1 on the US charts in the summer of '79. This is where John Deacon and Queen come into the picture. John Deacon was the bass player for Queen, and also a songwriter who had contributed songs in the past, as all the members of Queen did. One of his songs, You're My Best Friend, was a hit from Queen's 1975 album, A Night at the Opera. He also co-wrote the song Under Pressure, a collaboration between Queen and David Bowie that was released in 1981. John Deacon, in addition to being a rock and roller, was a big fan of soul and dance music. He'd had it in his mind to try recording more of a funky dance song with Queen. The night that Nile Rodgers from Chic first wrote the outline to the song Good Times, he happened to be hanging out with John Deacon in New York City. The next day, when he went into the studio to start recording it, guess who was there again? John Deacon. So you can easily see where the influence was. John Deacon took that great bass line and modified it. Where the bass line in Good Times really blends in with the song, John Deacon from the opening bar of Another One Bites the Dust puts it right in your face. The bass line is far and away the big hook in the song. It's one of the great bass lines in the history of rock music, and really an iconic thing unto itself. So John Deacon's got the bass line. The other thing he had kicking around in his head was the phrase, Another One Bites the Dust, like a Western cowboy phrase. So he wrote some lyrics as a cowboy kind of thing, lighthearted and humorous. But when they put the backing track down, it came out heavier, so he decided to change the lyrics and put more of a gangster feel on it. He walks merrily down the street with the brim pulled way down low. No sound but the sound of his feet. The lyrics, in and of themselves, don't really say much. It's about a guy walking down the street like a gangster with bullets ripping out. Like a lot of rock and pop songs, they're cool and interesting words and phrases that go along with a great piece of music. Not surprisingly, within the band there was some resistance to the song. It didn't sound remotely like anything Queen had done before. Roger Taylor, Queen's drummer, thought it was too much of a departure for the band. It's understandable why he may not have been the biggest fan. The drum beat was a drum loop. A drum loop is where the drummer plays a beat and that beat gets recorded and looped over and over. You can imagine any drummer not being happy that the role was minimized in this way. John Deacon wound up playing all the instruments on the song with the exception of that drum loop and a few guitar effects that Brian May added. He played bass, rhythm guitar, piano, and came up with most of those amazing sound effects. The amazing thing is, there was no synthesizer on the song, and since this was 1980, certainly no computer and digital effects. John Deacon created all those sounds from normal instruments by playing parts backwards and distorting the sounds in different ways. Another great element of the song is the vocal performance. Freddie Mercury loved Another One Bites the Dust and put his heart and soul into it. Brian May said Freddie recorded so many takes his throat bled. And think about what a departure it was for him. Freddie had a voice that could do opera, which he pretty much did on some of their songs. And here he's doing a gritty, funky dance song. Here's an earlier vocal he did in the song Bicycle Race.
I want to ride my bicycle. I want to ride my bike. I want to ride.
Now compare that to Another One Bites the Dust.
How do you think I'm gonna get along without you when you're gone? You took me for everything that I had and
It's an incredible metamorphosis and a hugely impressive vocal performance. The songs recorded included on the album The Game, released in 1980. The members of Queen had no intention of releasing Another One Bites the Dust as a single. To them, it was kind of a novelty song they did that they included on the album. Enter Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson was a fan of Queen, and he was friends with the band. Queen had done a concert at the LA Forum, and Michael and his brothers went to the show. After the show, they're all hanging around, and Queen plays for them Another One Bites the Dust. The Jackson brothers loved it. Michael loved it. He told them, that's what kids want to hear and dance to, and you have to release that as a single. That's a #1 hit. While they were mulling over Michael's advice, some black-oriented stations in New York started playing it. And that sealed the deal, and it was released as a single. So Michael Jackson was absolutely right, and the members of Queen have always cited his influence, and that without that, the song may never have been released as a single. Now the song comes out, and it's a huge hit. It goes to #1 in the US for 3 weeks. It spends 10 weeks inside the top 5. It spends 13 weeks inside the top 10, the longest of any song that year, and it's the top-selling single in the US for 1980. What's even more impressive, this song, recorded by a classic rock band, went all the way to #2 on both the soul and disco charts. And in a great piece of irony, it knocks the song Upside Down by Diana Ross out of the top spot. Upside Down being written and produced by none other than Bernard Edwards and Nile Rodgers, whose song Good Times had inspired Another One Bites the Dust in the first place. Another One Bites the Dust is a legendary song and Queen's biggest hit. It's appeared in numerous films and TV shows, and to this day is a staple on classic rock, adult contemporary, pop, and soul radio. It's a great example of how most songs don't magically appear out of thin air. Most of the time, they're influenced by other songs that were in turn influenced by other songs. You can draw a straight line from Hollywood Swinging to Good Times to Another One Bites the Dust. All very different and unique songs, but each one built upon the other to create something new. Here are some other interesting facts about Another One Bites the Dust. Bernard Edwards, who came up with the bass line for Good Times, didn't have a problem with Another One Bites the Dust. What he had a problem with was people criticizing Chic for stealing the bass line from Queen, instead of the other way around. He did have a problem with the Sugar Hill Gang, who took his bass line and didn't even change it. They copied it note for note in their pioneering rap song, Rapper's Delight. After hearing an early version of it at a dance club, Chic threatened legal action, but quickly came to an agreement where they were given partial writing credit. Another One Bites the Dust was actually the second hit song off the album The Game, following Crazy Little Thing Called Love. The Game was a major pivot point for the band, departing from their typical progressive rock to record pop, funk, and arena rock-sounding records. Weird Al Yankovic, that titan of parody music, got his first chart placing with his parody song, Another One Rides the Bus. He released it in 1981 and premiered it on the Dr. Demento Show. The Dr. Demento Show was a radio show that specialized in playing obscure, oddball, and parody songs. I still remember during junior high and high school days lying in bed listening to it on Sunday nights. Another One Bites the Dust has been used during training for medical professionals to provide the correct number of chest compressions per minute while performing CPR, as has songs like Stayin' Alive by the Bee Gees and Beat It by Michael Jackson. One of the weirdest facts about the song: some people believe when played backwards there are lyrics that talk about smoking marijuana. Even today, there are people who are absolutely convinced of this. Does it say it's fun to smoke marijuana? Does it say it's fun to smoke an iguana? Does it say it's fun to watch Futurama? We'll have to leave that one to the conspiracy theorists. During the making of the movie Rocky III, Another One Bites the Dust was used in a scene where Rocky's training for a fight. But the producers couldn't get permission to use the song, so the band Survivor was hired to write an original song, which turned out to be Eye of the Tiger. In 1981, Queen released another song that was a big hit that had an iconic bass line by John Deacon, the collaboration with David Bowie, Under Pressure. So John Deacon was the author of not one, but two of the great rock bass lines in history. Which leads to another thing to think about. There's a lot of famous bands with great careers who never have a song as famous and iconic as this. Queen actually has three. Another One Bites the Dust, Bohemian Rhapsody, and We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions. Now that is amazing. That wraps up the story behind the famous Queen song Another One Bites the Dust. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, and I'll be back soon with another story behind a great rock and roll song.